Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, and we are back. We took a quick mid-season summer break, got a little bit of recovery in from an insane college softball season in first half of 2021. Maybe also gave you a chance, hopefully, to catch up on the first 20 episodes of season 2. It just completely flew right by. This is already episode 21 and episode 61 overall of the show. It's crazy. And we are here now, back at it again for more softball. So some reminders for ways to keep up with the show. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. Subscribe to Bleav in Softball on YouTube and actually watch the episodes as well. All right, so getting back into it, let's go through today's order. First, as usual, we will cover our bases, give you some news and updates in the softball world. Then we'll head into today's interview with Amanda Scarborough. She is easily one of the best voices of softball that we have right now and an ambassador of our game. She just gets it. So I'm excited for you to hear from her. Then we'll end things with the Foul Tip of the Week, our new segment this season, where we share tips to help us get better. Okay, let's jump right in. Covering our bases. Man, we're back in the swing of things here. And in the last Covering Our Bases, actually, in our previous episode, we kind of covered a little bit of everything. You know, moves being made in college softball, the Florida Gulf Coast League, the Olympic teams prep before they started traveling to the games, you know, Athletes Unlimited signees for season 2. We covered a lot. It's only been a couple weeks since then, and it still feels like a lot has happened since. But first, let me hit you with the headline. The biggest news, the biggest stage really, is the Olympics. The teams are in Japan. They're making their way. Some of them are there. They're on their way to the Olympic Village for competition. We are just days away, single digit, from seeing softball on the Olympic stage for the first time in 13 years. 3 Summer Olympics later and an extra year delay with COVID-19, it just feels poetic that softball is the first official event kicking off the games. And it starts early, actually. Keep this in mind. The first games are actually July 21st local time in Tokyo. It's a couple days before opening ceremonies officially kicks things off for everybody on July 23rd. So keep that in mind. It starts a little bit early, which I love it. The sooner the better. It's like they know we don't want any more time wasted before we get to see Olympic softball again. And day 1, you can expect Australia versus Japan, basically this APAC showdown. And I like seeing that host team and the reigning gold medalists like right away. It's great. I'm excited. Then there's USA versus Italy. Team USA has actually been playing Japanese teams in Japan on their way to Tokyo to prep. Team Italy is coming off of winning the European Championships again this year. And you know what? I can't help but think of Coach Candrea. I mean, we talked to him about this when he came on the show, but just with all of his Team USA history in the Olympics and then also advising Team Italy this time around for these games, I'm sure that's going to be a really special one for him. And we'll see a lot of his influence too. And then there's Mexico and Canada. And really, this is that like North America showdown, right? It's like Canada was so short, just came up short of a medal last time back in 2008. Mexico, this is their first time ever. It's so great. Like just to see all of these things come to fruition is so nice. So that's day 1. There's going to be a lot of games in between, but the gold medal game and the bronze medal game are both scheduled for July 27th. So that's when we'll know who is at the top of their game, right? I would say there's so many things I could talk about, honestly. I'm trying to keep this concise, so just to hit you guys with the top headlines, but I'm most excited for how the stories will unfold. There's been so much buildup, but Team USA's redemption journey, especially for Kat Osterman and Monica Abbott. After the silver medal in 2008, this is that for them. It's definitely a new journey. They both said that when they came on the show. It's not just revenge or avenging that last experience. It's a new journey in itself, but there is definitely that in the back of their minds. Then you have like Erica Piancastelli representing Italy, just like her mom did back in 2000. And these now are 2021 Olympics, but there really are the 2020 Olympics. She's number 20. It's 20 years apart. It's just, I mean, the stars are aligned here. I'm excited to see that. Team Mexico, like I said, playing in the Olympics for the first time ever. I have a soft spot for them. Like maybe there's a little bit of because it's my heritage too. My grandmother's Mexican, my father's side. So I have that, but it's also just I love barriers being broken. So them being the first ones to do this, big deal. Then you have people like Danielle Laurie. She's a mom of two, making the comeback on a quest for that medal for Team Canada with some old teammates, new teammates, a whole mix coming from Team Canada. But then there's college players too, like Australia's Gabby Plain coming fresh off the NCAA tournament to Tokyo. I mean, you think about, Rachel Garcia, Deja Malipula as well, but it's just crazy to think about, like, that was just last month where that was wrapping up. And here we are. And then you look at Japan. I mean, Yukiko Ueno, I just can't wait to see veterans like her, right? And also the different styles of play. I mean, this has been talked about time and time again on this show when we talk about Japanese softball, because so many people have played in Japan, and it just shows you the scale of the sport. And you see things like Japan's just precision in their style of play. And you can kind of see that on the different teams from different regions in just terms of how they approach the game. And I just think it's so cool. It's even a learning experience. And I'm just going to be cheering hard for all the Olympians, and especially the Bleav in softballers. Pretty much everybody that I just named, except for Ueno, except for maybe Deja Malipula, has been on the show. And a large chunk of Team Mexico has as well. So I just, again, extra special place in my heart for them. And I just can't wait to see them play. But there's also some news in the softball world in the States that's interesting. So for college, the name, image, likeness has changed in terms of policy. So as of July 1st, student athletes can now make money or profit off of the use of their name, image, and likeness. So before this just wasn't permitted. Getting paid for something like that was a violation of NCAA rules. It was amateur status. Like that would be kind of blurring the lines with what professional players do, et cetera. But it's changed. So it's a lot different. There are a lot of implications. And one, that's fun, like a fun example is, yes, Montana Fouts is now on Cameo, right? Like there are fun, cool things like that we're already seeing immediately. And like anything though, I think it'll be an adjustment. A lot of women student athletes across sports have a large social media following. They do, and there could be opportunities there. And I hope, and ideally, it's more equity between the women athletes and the male athletes. At the same time, it could affect the locker room a little bit. I mean, it's another thing already on their very full plate as student athletes, and it maybe will kind of create a larger gap between the top players on the team and maybe the ones that don't get as much playing time. But I think that this is when coaches and athletic departments that care about their athletes as people, this is when that comes in handy. Like if that's your approach, they're going to need it. They need the support. And I think it's something for recruits to consider as well now when they're looking to find their place in college softball. And speaking of that, actually, recruiting is in full swing too. This is also the time period where the biggest tournaments are happening, like players are reaching out to coaches and vice versa, all that good stuff. College coaches are everywhere and they're watching games in person. I mean, Lauren Hager was talking about with her travel ball team, like she's seeing people out there recruiting. They are excited. It's a huge difference from last summer, just not being able to do it. And I'm just so glad to see my Twitter timeline full of that again versus last year when it was just all of us trying to survive and get through it till we got to be in person on the field again. But you know what? My timeline's also full of other fun stuff too right now. I don't know if you caught it. I hope you did, but the MLB Celebrity All-Star softball game that just happened kind of in conjunction with the Home Run Derby, All-Star Week, all that stuff. Jenny Finch, Natasha Watley, and Lauren Chamberlain all were there. And I just love it, right? It's like Jenny Finch striking people out on rise balls like no one can hit her again. Watley getting some hits, right? It's just fun. And I think these are all great representations of our community. These three are awesome. And it's synergy with the MLB, which is good. These three are ambassadors to try to create that bridge between baseball and softball, and I think it's a good thing. So let's keep going. And then there was also the ESPYs. So speaking of fun things, so cool to see Odyssey Alexander was nominated for Best College Female Athlete. Now, Paige Buckets, as we like to call her from UConn, the basketball player, she was the one who actually won, but just the fact that Odyssey was there is so awesome. And then the OU softball team was nominated for Best Team. Team, not college team, not like some specific filtered category. No. Like they were up in the category with the Dodgers and the Buccaneers, right? Like we're talking about teams coming off of a World Series championship, the Super Bowl, huge teams. Like this is a big deal. And I have to say too, shout out to Stanford women's basketball because my alma mater was also a part of that nomination category. But these are just all things, again, it's just good visibility on a broader scale for our sport. The foundation was laid and has been up to this point, and we just have to keep building. But one of the best builders that we have is today's guest. So let's head into the interview. She is one of ESPN's lead softball analysts, premier pitching instructor, Texas A&M Hall of Famer, two-time All-American, and spokesperson for our game, Amanda Scarborough. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, finally. Thanks for having me. Sorry it took a while, but better late than never, right?
Oh, absolutely. Also, to be fair, what a wild college softball season. I mean, are you even recovered yet?
I think I'm just getting there. I feel like it's taken over a month, honestly, to recover from. And the weird thing is, Jenna, is that I called most of the games from my house. So it's not like I was even having to travel or be on the road. And there was less travel, but I felt more tired at the end of the season. And I don't know if I was just out of college softball shape or what, or maybe it was just emotionally draining and emotionally just crazy. And it kind of was.
I feel like it has to be a little bit of all of it, right? Because yes, we all kind of were a little bit out of college softball shape after last year, but then also you're never turned off. Working from home is great. Yes, the broadcast does have an end point that you can actually be off, but you're constantly researching, tuning into other games, trying to keep up with everything. So it was a lot. I mean, in a good way, but I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a good point too about being able to tune in to other games. I feel like when I look back at this season and how unique it was in the sense that we didn't have to travel as much to get to games, I personally felt like I was able to watch a lot more softball in different conferences and different players. And there, of course, were more games than ever online, being able to stream on the ESPN app or, watch on TV. So, but normally it's hard to watch sitting on an airplane. It's hard to watch, in a hotel. Things are easier when you're at your own home, you're on your own TV, you're locked in with your own passwords and logins to different things where you can watch as many games as you want. And 4 at one time too, with my Apple TVs. I'm like, this is the best thing ever. So yeah, maybe that was a big part of it. I'm just taking in a lot of information throughout the season, trying to prepare and stay on it.
I know the amount of screens that were up at all times throughout this softball season is unprecedented, but amazing. I mean, it just means that the fact that we're able to watch all of those, that they're actually available, that's the dream. It's so great.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so good for our sport. And I love it. It just continues to grow.
100%. Well, I'm glad you were able to get a vacation in. I love that you went basically straight from OKC because, I mean, you earned it. So
I'm doing that every year. That was my first year to do that. And I think after regionals, I'm like, you know what? I am tired. And we haven't even been to Supers and World Series yet. I'm going to want a vacation. I don't like to wait. That's just not in my personality to wait, for a couple of months. I'm like, I want it immediately after season. So after regionals, I went and booked a vacation for Friday after World Series. And it got a little dicey because of the fact that the World Series was pushed back a day. And luckily I drove to Oklahoma City from Austin because it's only about 5 hours. And I mean, lucky for me, selfishly, that game was early on Thursday, game 3 of the Champ Series. So because it ended early, I got to get home and spend, a few more hours at home before I turned right back around and left the next morning. So yeah, kind of a crazy ending for me, but that vacation was worth it.
Oh, totally. And I'm sure you had lots of great wine, which is always a win. So
Yes, always.
I
For
saw
sure.
that you're a wine lover, actually. Like I've seen you post about it and stuff. So what's your go-to wines? Like what are your favorites?
I really like red and I like cabs a lot. I
Mm.
don't like it to be too fruity. I'd rather it be like a little bit earthy and minerally. So one of my favorites is called Austin Hope.
Oh,
You're one of my favorite ones. And it says, I just like the name of it, right? Like I live in Austin. It has the word hope in it. Like just it's a great taste, just great experience all around. And it's way less than Camus and it tastes a lot like Camus. So it's very good.
really? I was
Yeah.
literally about to say, like, when I decide to splurge, I guess that Camus is a great one. So that's amazing. Okay, I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, you should try it.
That's awesome. I mean, wine and softball, right? Like that's the dream. So
And dogs.
yes. Uh, well, okay. This year of softball, like the whole calendar year, right? Because we focus a lot on college softball, obviously, like for obvious reasons in the first half of the year. So it's like we could look back at all of that. There's so much to unpack. There's more stuff coming like the rest of this year. A million things I could ask you, basically. But why don't we just start with when you look back at this college softball season? I don't know about you, but for me, it felt like in some ways it was sort of a turning point for our sport. And if you think about it from that lens, like what are those sort of maybe just the top few key moments that really felt like, okay, this is a turning point for softball in your eyes?
Yeah, I think to me, it all started with just being able to play again. Like I go back to the beginning of the year and just the excitement that you felt before the season, having last season taken from us in a lot of different ways, whether it was covering it or playing it or coaching it or being a fan of it. So I think that everybody felt that at the beginning of the season, that it was like how we really miss this and we're all connected and united, that we all can't wait to get started. So kind of had that united front of like, oh, we all love this and we're all here for each other. Like, let's do this season together. And then I think the next one that I really remember is a selection show and just all of the attention that it got, because the bracket seemed in a lot of people's eyes to be so out there and so crazy and got a lot of attention, a lot of coverage and a lot of drama, right? So it's like we started the season all together, all united, can't wait for it. And then the selection show came and it was like, okay, things are about to get really serious because the postseason's coming. And then it just felt every weekend in the postseason got bigger and bigger and bigger, from Texas and Oregon playing each other in the regional to having the first game on ABC to then at the World Series, the first game we had a Cinderella story. And it's just, that never happens. But JMU beating Oklahoma at the 1 seed just to me set the tone. Odyssey Alexander being the star, being like the Cinderella. I mean, not just the team, but she ended up being the Cinderella, so to speak. And I think that because it got so much energy, the 1 seed lost the first game of the World Series, no matter who it was to, right? But it was to the only unseeded team that had the pitcher that everybody fell in love with. So I just think that the World Series gained traction because JMU did so well. And every game that Oklahoma played, the 1 seed was on the ropes. And, it's crazy, Jenna, because I called that game, and like the day before we were sitting there talking in our production meeting, I'm like, God, can you guys imagine like what it would be like if JMU beat Oklahoma? And everybody's like rolling their eyes. Like, and I always thought that it was possible just because of what JMU was doing in the super regional before that. They just felt like they had the momentum. The only question that you had was, are they going to be able to handle their emotions when they get there? And they did. And I thought that it would be so great too, Jenna, of like, can you imagine if JMU beats them? Because for that very reason that I said, then when Oklahoma plays, every game is an elimination game for them. Every game, their backs are against the wall, and that creates ratings, that creates talk, that creates momentum. And then for them to go through and win it all, I mean, it was just like the perfect story of the Women's College World Series to end it on a high.
I completely agree with you. And I think with JMU and Odyssey Alexander too, it was like, I don't know. I don't know if it felt like the beginning of a new era or what exactly it was. Maybe it was just like certain things all coming up and culminating into one moment in terms of like the outside of the Power Five, just being given an opportunity, and they did the most with that opportunity, and they exceeded expectations in that opportunity. And I'm excited for people like Odyssey Alexander, like now being in the pro space and getting to kind of take that momentum forward. It's awesome. But I agree with you. I don't know if I've ever seen the energy that Oklahoma had like after that first loss, like going through the losers bracket. It's just like, I felt like they were screaming at the top of their lungs, like after every single hit, every play, like everything. The energy was just unreal.
There's a lot of buildup for them, I think, because of the expectations and everybody talking about them and then losing. I mean, I just watched, remember Novak Djokovic just played in Wimbledon. He lost the first set or match. I'm not a huge tennis fan, but he lost. And then it was like, after that, he turned it on and he was like, it felt like the pressure was taken off of me actually when I lost that first set. And I think for Oklahoma, it could kind of be the same way because they're number one. They have all the expectations. It's like you lose. It's almost like, okay, that wasn't actually that bad. Like we thought maybe it would feel a lot worse and it sucks. Like you hate losing. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I'm still breathing. I'm still here. We're still a great team. Now let's go play the way that we know that we can play. And when you think about JMU being a Cinderella story, they earned it. Like oftentimes you might think of a one seed going down or because of errors or like somebody not playing well. And it's like every game that JMU won, they earned the win. It wasn't somebody handing it to them. It wasn't somebody giving it to them. And I think that it made it that much more special to follow along because they had the big home run. They had Odyssey Alexander striking out people with her rise ball left and right. Like they had it all going for them and it wasn't luck. They created their own destiny.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I had seen some people on Twitter, for example, like with JMU calling them a Cinderella story. Some people hated that term. But, when I think about it, I'm also a Disney nerd. So let me preface with that, right? But I can understand, like, it's like, okay, they weren't an overnight success. They put a lot of hard work in before that. Totally. But if you think about it, it's like, well, Cinderella was working pretty hard before her Prince Charming came along. You know what I mean? Like she was putting in the work every single day and overcoming adversity. So if you think about it from that angle, I know that's kind of like just me with my Disney, trivia, but it does seem to make sense.
I don't think it should be taken as a slight to be that Cinderella story. I really don't, especially because the comparison that you just gave. I mean, I feel like that is like, you're exactly right. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's like, it's okay. I mean, it just shows how our sport is growing. That's really what bottom line, like what it comes down to, because we're used to seeing, a top 5 team where the highest seed that's ever won it is just a top 10. So honestly, if you're out of the top 10, anything is really a Cinderella story based off of history. We're not just saying that because it's JMU. We're not just, saying that it's just James Madison. It's just really a reflection of the history of our sport, not a reflection on James Madison.
Right. Totally. Because what is happening in that case from like the media side, the broadcasting side is you're telling the story, right? And it's like, yeah, there's story that you can tell there in terms of like what they've done all season to get to that point and the success Odyssey Alexander had in conference play and all those things. And that's all true. But to do it in the postseason, like that's like another season in a lot of ways. So it is a new story that's emerging.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever have, and like, I mean, I hope every World Series is exciting like that, but I don't know if we'll ever have that exciting of a World Series. I mean, I feel like everybody's going to remember it forever.
And I think it feels like, I don't know if you watch The Bachelor or The Bachelorette,
Yeah.
but yeah, you know how it's like, this is the most dramatic season ever, right? I feel like that's the World Series now. Like every year it's like, oh, this is the craziest one. And just somehow it like gets topped every year. I don't know how we're going to do it next year, but we'll see.
Well, and I think too that now other teams are going to be inspired by them, whether they are a lower tiered Power 5 team or a mid-major team. They're going to be used as an inspiration for a while. And it's kind of like JMU ignites that fire, not just in teams, but I think in individual players too, where it's like, okay, well, why can't I be Odyssey? Why can't I be Sarah Jubis? Like if they can do it, then we can do it too. And so I really feel like they'll serve as inspiration for years to come. And we'll always talk about that World Series as the best ever, maybe one of the best ever.
I think so. And it's not a surprise, but since the numbers have come out in terms of ratings, viewership, and all of that the Women's College World Series significantly had better numbers than the Men's Baseball College World Series. And it's when I think about why, it's like there's a whole bunch of different things you could point to. But what do you think the essence of like, you know what, this is why the women were just so inspiring and engaging?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, like like everybody was so excited for it in February. I think that you realized how much you missed it and how much that fans actually look forward to that moment. So because there was so much miss of the sport last year in COVID and missing seeing the athletes, hearing the stories, seeing the level of play, it just like every year the level of play gets better and better and better. It's not getting worse. Like our sport's growing in every aspect, and that definitely is one of them. I think that everybody looked forward to it, and there were so many eyes watching it who maybe hadn't watched it for a few years, who tuned in this year, and it was the best ever. You're seeing the growth right in front of your eyes happen with the development of pitchers, hitters, strategy, the way that we talk about the game. We're not saying, a routine fly ball to center field is a great catch anymore. It's okay, moving on. Like we're looking for those great plays because that's what we've grown to expect now out of the sport. So I just think that the expectations are higher and the sport's living up to the expectations.
And I feel like just the product itself, naturally the bar is just raised. Like it feels like the product is just so like from when I played to now, the expansion of knowledge and just like world class, really, especially on the hitting side. Performance is much larger. Like there were definitely pockets where, oh my gosh, these players are amazing. But I just feel like that's really expanded more and more. And like the bubble's not as small for that group of players. It's like I feel like the selection this year for Player of the Year, like Jocelyn Allo, makes complete sense. But also like how hard of a decision was that based on like how many people there were to choose from?
Yeah, like there's so many great players now, and I just think it goes back to not just like them developing in college. I think it goes to them developing as a 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old, like when it really matters, when they aren't just being this robotic mechanical swing, but they're learning how the body works instead of learning just how to swing. Like there's a difference. And I think that because coaches' knowledge are growing so much and being able to teach these athletes, not just hitters, these athletes, how to swing and how to use their body within a swing, it's becoming more powerful. We're hitting the ball harder. We're hitting harder ground balls that make it tougher for an infielder to field or more to get through the infield. So it's just like, I don't know. I just think it's a culmination of that development at a really, really young age, and then being able to blossom even more when you get to college and grow even more.
I agree. It's like there's these levels of learning and developing. And when you're kind of at the peak, it's like you really feel it really well, like that body awareness. You can feel it. Like not only do you understand it when you watch film and you're like, okay, I can see this, but you feel it, right? And there's so many more players who feel it so well. It's just, it's wild. It's so impressive.
But there's more ways to feel it. So now I can see myself. I can watch myself in slow motion. I can add a number or data to what I'm seeing and to a feel that can heighten the way that I'm feeling it. So I think that all of that works together to create that feel, because I think you're dead on, but it's because there's just so much more. Like technology is just like growing like crazy, and it's growing that feel for the players too to develop.
Right. And with pitching also. So we talk a lot about hitting because I feel like that's exploded so much, right? So it's so easy to talk about. But with pitching, it seems like it's evolved a lot just over the last 10 years. So from your perspective, how has it evolved? Like, what are the good things and what are some things that like, okay, we could really get better at this?
I think that being able to take your foot off of the pitching rubber, that rule that changed in college, and not just be really, really like have a really narrow stance to start your pitch. I feel like that has really helped. And I think that we forget about it because it happened either during the COVID year. I think during the COVID year is when it had changed, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we only got to see it for a couple of months and then it went away because softball went away and we were thinking about bigger things. But then pitchers got to practice it more because it was a more, they're practicing instead of playing games because of COVID. So I just think that I really saw pitchers throwing harder this year. And I think it's because that has a lot to do with it. Like the velocities were up, and I know that the guns are juiced up like for ESPN games and stuff, but they're not juiced up by 5 or 6 miles an hour. I mean, maybe 1 or 2, right? And we're still seeing so many 69, 70, 71 miles an hour. Like pitchers are throwing harder. And I really think that rule change helped a lot. I also think that, and this is something that doesn't get talked about enough, but pitchers have to move back too quickly at a young age.
Mm.
So they go from 35 feet at 10U to then 40 feet at 12U and then quickly go to 43 feet. Now, if you go back to say 2003, 2004, whenever I was a senior in high school, I didn't pitch from 43 feet until I got to college. So just in a short time, I'm not saying I'm like a young buck here, but I've not been out for that long, right? So just in that short amount of time, in under 20 years and about 15 years, pitchers are having to go all the way back to 43 feet before they get to college. Whereas me, I had multiple years at 35 feet, multiple years at 40. And then finally, when I'm strong enough, mature enough in college, went all the way back to 43 feet. So I think that maybe coaches are learning how to develop their pitchers better with moving back so quickly, because you're not only dealing with the distance, you're also dealing with the bigger ball. And so pitchers' hands aren't big enough. And so I think that for a while, pitchers really struggled with spin, movement, and then velocity, and then all that translates back to confidence, and because they're moving back too fast, because the rules just consistently change. And so I feel like that's something maybe that we need to continue to revisit or talk about, is moving pitchers back too quickly and it just really hindering their development, even though I do think that coaches now are learning to understand how to coach their players better in order to roll with the punches, in order to understand what needs to be done. But it's just a little bit unfair for pitchers, to be honest. I know we're divas, whatever, but it goes back really fast in distance and it's not helpful.
That's a great point, because I remember when I was in high school, because of travel ball and even my freshman year at Stanford, I was still pitching at that point. But I remember in high school, the high school competition was 40 feet, but then travel ball, like 18 gold and all that stuff at the time, was 43. So even that inconsistency was super weird, honestly. Like I in some ways was glad to be doing 43 because that's what college would be. But it was kind of strange to go from playing in the fall at 43 and then you go back to 40. All of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm throwing pretty hard here. And then you go, like, I don't know. It's just going back and forth. And I feel like consistency would be helpful in that case.
Yeah, because I even think for 12U, I think the ball got bigger. You started to use the 12-inch ball when I was younger, but I still think you pitched from 35 feet and not 40 feet until 14U, I think. I'm just trying to remember, but I don't remember having to move back and go to a bigger ball all at the same time.
Right.
Which 12U is when they're all different sizes. Some are, 50 pounds sopping wet, with their uniform and cleats on. And others are 120 pounds fully developed, have already started their period. Like, not to get too much, it's just such a big age of development. Like, there's so many different sizes and it just can really hinder. I really think like a smaller pitcher, undersized, I should say, at that point, from wanting to be a pitcher, because who wants to just get hit and walk people all the time because you can't hold the ball, you can't spin it, you can't hit your spots, you can't throw for a decent velocity because the ball's too big or you're feeling like it's too far away. So I don't know. I think that's something that we need to talk about, like, and maybe make some changes.
That is so interesting. I hadn't thought about that in a long time and hadn't thought about that since I played, right? And then like today, like what are the effects and how this kind of trickles throughout their careers and what we're seeing in college and all of those things. It's super interesting.
So much of it is internal confidence with it, because if you're getting hit, you're not going to love pitch. Like, it's just, I know we can say, yeah, it doesn't matter if you get hit, if you love it, you love it. And yeah, that's true. But like at the end of the day, you want to be a good pitcher. And if you're getting hit, walking people, not throwing like harder gradually over time, like your confidence is going to go down. It's natural. So confidence is a huge part of that translates to results on the field.
It's so true. And I feel like that's the thing too, is there's so much information out there, especially for the younger players that are developing and who want to play in college and who are trying to work towards these different goals. There's so much info. It can get super overwhelming. You're like, well, how do I know what's right, what's not? And I feel like with what you're doing with Pitching Angel and your mission to help those women, those young women, those girls, is helpful in terms of helping them simplify. It's like, how do these players simplify during that stage?
Yeah, I think by having somebody give them a focus, by breaking down mechanics or ideas that you need to be thinking about and working toward over time, whether it's an intangible or tangible part of pitching. And I think too, what I've really seen too with the courses is, yes, it for sure helps the girl, but it helps her parents be a better support for her by breaking it down in their mind too, to give them things to look for, to give them phrases, words, cues, keys to look for at practice. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be there every time that girl pitches. Their private coach isn't going to be there whenever they pitch privately. The most development is going to take place on your own. So whether that's by yourself pitching or pitching with your parents or your guardian, somebody who lives with you, like that's when the majority of the development is going to come in a week or in a month. And so it's, how can we better educate and prepare these parents to take on their responsibility? Because it is a big responsibility to work with their daughter as a pitcher and to work with her mentally, emotionally, and physically to become the best that she can be.
I mean, spot on. Like it is 100% true that most of what you're doing in terms of development, obviously, like you said, you learn a lot in those sessions, whether you're going to a camp or whether you're going to individual lessons, all those things, you learn a ton, but it's understanding. And again, like having that feel, being able to feel it, whoever's catching you or whatever, like you said, you're right. It's like, what are those cues? Cause it's teaching at the end of the day. Like that's why we call it a student of the game, and being able to do that. And I really think of coaches as teachers in that way too. And so it's like, how can we help things kind of click for this younger generation?
Yeah, as coaches, parents, and I think being able to learn on your own, like through these courses, I built them during COVID, and I think that girls and parents become a lot more comfortable with learning online because everybody was forced to do it. It's like everybody was kind of just, you had to do it. Like you had to do stuff online because if you wanted to talk to people, if you wanted to learn, if you wanted to get interaction. And so now that people are more comfortable with learning online, that it's feasible. It's something that you can do and that you can learn a lot. Like I know that I don't just want somebody to be online. I want them to be able to be on their phone, looking at my course at the field, in their garage, in their backyard, maybe in their living room. Like I don't just want them to be in an office learning. Of course you can do that if you want, but if you're wanting to get out, that you can, and have a resource next to you that you can go to and look at drag, glove hand, like all an accuracy workout, velocity, like just a library of just resources that you can go to whenever you need.
That's the thing, is whenever you need it, right? Because so many schedules are nuts. Like it's being able to have that sort of like, okay, I know that I can go here at any time, like whenever it works for them, because our lives are crazy now. So I think that's so key though. It's like there's that consistency of like, okay, I know I have this resource is really important. I don't know if softball used to have that, right? But now it's building up more and more, which is great.
Yeah, and somebody that you can trust. Hopefully you can trust me, and that's really why Pitching Angel like started. And it's made a good point of like that you're not alone, or like you can go to this whenever you need it. And that's so true. And that's why I started Pitching Angel, is to be there for pitchers, to let them know that what they're feeling, the experiences that they're going through, other pitchers have felt it. Other pitchers have survived. Other pitchers have come out strong. Other pitchers have worked through it, and you're not alone. Like you're going through this experience where it does feel, pitching is so hard. It does feel like you're all by yourself, but Pitching Angel like came around to let you know that you're not alone, whether it's through these courses or following me online or just thinking about it at any given time. Like, okay, I'm not the only one that's going through this hard moment right now. Like that was the ultimate goal for even starting Pitching Angel, and really where it stemmed from.
See, this is why I think you're one of the best voices of softball that we have right now. Because it's not only that you were a former player, right? So you get it, you understand what's going on. I obviously like your style and your analysis, your storytelling, all of those things. But the fact that you're also still involved with day-to-day softball, right? Like you're still involved with developing pitchers and helping young softball players and doing all of these things. So it's just a different level of understanding that I think translates really well to when you call games, because there is a bigger picture too. Obviously you call the game in front of you, but there's a lot behind it with our game. And so all of these different dimensions of softball factor into that.
Mm-hmm. I think I was just taught to feel so much, like honestly, like the pitching mechanics side of it, but like just really go deeper into my brain of like, and my parents telling me it's okay to feel, like it's okay to be sad, it's okay to feel this, it's okay to feel that, to where it opened me up to feel more, where I can get into somebody's head and like I just have that empathy for them. Like I feel what they're feeling, for better or for worse, to be honest, the happiness and the sad parts. Like I truly, like I get it and know that there's so much more beyond the field that somebody is going through that could affect their play. And I mean, so many times we can be like, oh, why isn't Jenna playing good? You know, usually she's hitting 400 and her batting average is all the way down to 310. It's like, I guarantee that either she's playing through an injury, something's happening off the field, like there's something bigger going on that is a bigger story that affects their play and what they're able to bring to their team and what they're going through as a person. So I just love being able to document it, all of it, like within a game calling on ESPN.
Yes. And I feel like you talk about adversity a lot, whether it's in the booth or even on social media, whatever. And I can't help but like, I remember watching you play before. This was when I must have been in high school, watching you play. And I remember your senior year and you got hurt, so you weren't really able to play, but you were basically like peer coaching Megan Gibson and still doing all that you could for the success of the team. And I think there are different ways to overcome adversity, right? But one is what you did, which is put all of your energy into what you're able to do. Like, what can I do in this moment to help the team, myself, everybody? And I think that's a key part. I feel like we talk about it. People talk about it at a really high level, meaning like, oh, yeah, you have to overcome adversity. But it's like, but what does that look like? Right. And so I always think back to that with you as a great example of being able to do that.
Yeah, and to me, selfishly, I'm probably just like thinking, I just want to stay busy so I don't have to think about it. You know, like that's where I was coming from. And I'm not saying that was my only intentions, right, at all. But like I started doing it and I'm like, oh, this is taking my mind off of things a little bit. And I like it and I'm enjoying it and I'm helping my team and I'm having a role and like all these other things were stemming from it, right? And so it probably, like, I don't even remember the day that it started. It probably just happened one day where I went down to the bullpen because I didn't have anything else to do. And I'm like, oh, try this or do this. And then, and again, like, oh yeah, I'll start charting the pitches. And this is like giving me something to like do in the dugout now, you know? So it's like, it's not like I started that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to become this coach now. Like, that's not how my brain operated in that moment at all. It was just more so of like, okay, what can I do now? Let me start with this. Let me do this. Oh, this is making an impact. I'll keep doing it. Oh, I'm kind of enjoying this and other people like how I'm helping them. I'll keep going. So just like kind of playing into your strengths all the while trying to stay busy and not focus on the fact that I couldn't play.
It's just doing the next right thing, right?
Yes.
Like that's really it. And then it naturally kind of unfolds from there. You sort of find your way by doing that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you're either helping a situation or you're hurting it at all times. At every single point of the day, in a situation, in life, in a game, you're either helping it or hurting it. And it's like, okay, how can I help this situation right now? My team is hurting because I'm hurt and I'm hurting, but okay, move forward. How can I help my team right now? Not draw attention to myself, not make it about me, not put the focus on the negative, but just help any situation that you're in, whether it's a team talk, a practice, a game, just being at your house, communicating with your parents, helping with dishes. Like there's so many, I'm either helping the situation or I'm hurting it. And I think when you look at life that way, like it really helps try to make your decisions of like, do I want to do this or do I want to do this?
Totally. And obviously the environment that you're in and the leadership that you have, meaning the coaching staff, if you're in college or developing growing up, even at the professional level too, like all of those things also help. And is that your coach? Is that the bobblehead of your coach behind you?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't even know how it survived so many moves. Well, not so many, but several moves. Here's Coach Evans.
Love it.
Her and her red hair. Yeah. Love it. I just don't know how I still have that because I'm pretty sure I got that when I was still playing and my parents kept it and got me one, like on a game when they had it.
It's so great. I love it. Like, I love that stuff. Like any little souvenir, it's funny because some people put like all of their awards, right? Like up at a certain area in their office or whatever. But then there are other things that you just pick up over the years and it's like, hey, this is meaningful, so.
Definitely. And I don't know if you know this, really off topic. orchids are so hard to keep alive. I don't know if anybody has tried to keep an orchid alive. I have tried literally 10 times. My fiance is a farmer, like green thumb, like knows how to keep things alive. He can't do it. Like they're so hard. I just don't really understand it. I don't get it. And they're so pretty. And I keep buying them thinking that this is going to be the one that hangs alive. And it just always ends up just a stick. Yeah.
I have had that problem too. I thought like, oh yeah, like I'm fine with plants. And then I remember like in one summer in college when I was staying with the host family, I was like helping them out around the place. And they sort of had like a mini farm, like they had chickens and roosters and goats randomly, which was an adventure. But I remember I had to water all the plants and I destroyed like all their mint leaves because I just like over watered it, and I was just like shooting like it is hard. Takes patience.
If anybody has any suggestions for how to keep an orchid alive, I am all ears. So just total sidebar.
I wish I could help you. I can't in that case. But honestly, speaking of like settings, right? Like we're talking about your office right now and where we're kind of filming and recording this, but I've seen you tweet and share a lot about the evolution of like the sets, the broadcast sets that you've worked on, like from, 10 plus years ago, having sort of these like portable, like didn't you have some like wicker furniture, right? Like holding up some laptops or something like that to now. That's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah. And I think too, it just goes to show more investment in the sport. It's not that we didn't always have like these beautiful ESPN sets, is that they cost more money. So being able to see it literally go from like Pottery Barn or Pier 1, like wicker set that was like in right field, the same area that studio was at this year for the World Series and for Seven Innings Live. We were there too. Like, again, that wasn't that long ago. That was 6 or 7 years ago, where it went from wicker with two people and like having to cram a guest in there, like just so tight and close. But the stadium was beautiful behind. Like the stadium and the backdrop never changed. It's just everything that's closer to the camera has changed with a bigger set, more lights, more cameras, more production crew, more highlights, more packages. Like everything internally and externally that you see now is just, gosh, it's grown so much. But yeah, it's definitely experienced a lot on that stage of being like on a scaffolding and the wicker. Yeah, a lot.
But it's cool when you get those visual cues or like visual evidence almost of that evolution and that progress, right? Like, cause it's like, you can feel those things, but like to actually see like, oh my gosh, look at this set compared to forever ago, look at the crowds, look at the stadium with the double decker now, like being able to see it with your eyes is like, it's just sort of, it's really cool to witness.
Yeah. And hear it with your ears too, because speaking of the double deck, it was so much louder in there this year, this World Series. And you could just really hear it when we were doing Seven Innings Live and we were doing studio down there. Like Oklahoma would just hit a fly ball during the Champ Series and like it's like the biggest, like, and then where you're looking back, like, did I just miss something? And it's like, no, it's just a fly ball to second base. But like the crowd is just so loud, or for just a simple strikeout, like in the second inning, like you would have thought that they won the game. And it was just so loud, so intense. Like what a great addition. I mean, that we've already outgrown it. I think like we should have already made room to make it even bigger.
I know, it's wild. It's a great thing, but it's crazy. It's like, wow, all right, first year we have this. Now we already want more. But that's the thing. It's like, where do you see it going from here? Whether it's the stadium, the broadcast sets, events, whatever.
God, it's so hard to imagine because it's like it happens so fast. I don't even know what's possible. Like I don't even know if I knew everything that we're doing now was possible 5 years ago. So if you would have asked me this question, I'd be like, oh, it's great now. It's really big. So I'm not sure what it can grow into. Like Meg Aronowitz, my ESPN boss, like maybe she has this vision board and this dream board that she has like conjured up in her office or something that like she has a better answer for this, because I just feel like it's so awesome and so incredibly like amazing right now. I'm like, well, what more could there be? But I guess more seats and sellouts every game. And more days to spread out the World Series and change it
More
a
days.
little bit. But I just don't want that to affect the fans and the momentum that we get with it. I totally know it's a student athlete thing, but other side of that is because it happens so fast, people just lock in for like a 6-day roller coaster and then it's over and it's like, that was the best thing ever. But if it's spread out, I mean, I'm sure fans will still watch it, but you just have that fear, that worry, that concern that it's like, okay, well, if there are only 2 games a day, will people be as interested because my 2 games and I can go out and do other things and get distracted from the games. If there's 4 games a day, you're like, I'm locked in, I'm here all day, I'm watching start to finish, like nothing's going to take me from the TV. So I just hope it doesn't affect the ratings or anything like that. I do know it's for the best for the student athlete and teams, but other side of the coin, how will it affect it?
Right. It's like if it's not broke, right? Like it's hard to think about. But I wonder if we could just fill in some of that time too with things like a home run derby or some of the things that the men do already that would still be something of interest to fans and the community.
Yeah. More studio shows, maybe like better times for the game where it's like in the middle of the day and like kind of leads into prime time and then people can't really leave. I don't know. We'll see how it all pans out. Obviously there are going to be some changes, it seems like.
Yeah, there definitely will. I mean, a big change has been the name, image, likeness situation as well, which there's a selfish part of me that's like, man, I wish this was just like 6 months ago because I feel like the stars that emerge in softball, I mean, obviously we're biased, but I just feel like there's so much star power there. And this World Series felt like so special in so many ways that we've talked about. And I'm really interested to see how this unfolds moving forward. I mean, from your perspective, how do you feel like name, image, likeness is going to affect our sport?
I think it's going to bring more attention to it. I really do. I think that players are going to get more opportunities than even the professional players that we have right now. I think that people like Montana, Odyssey is done, but Montana and Gabby Plain and, some other big names in our sport who will be Jocelyn Allo. I mean, pretty much the entire Oklahoma team. Like, I just think that there's so much opportunity to raise the bar for attention, marketing, money that they're getting paid, that will just carry out throughout their 4 years. And then hopefully, my hope is that it carries past that 4 years and gives the pro league and beyond some more momentum to be able to build up. And I think with the NIL stuff too, we're talking a lot about the college athletes, but the high school athletes need to start getting prepared. They need to start making their brand more. They're already doing that to get recruited and come up with a Twitter profile and, YouTube channel to send their videos. But they, I think, really need to start taking it a lot more serious because you think of the trickle effect, not just for next year, the year after that, but I'm thinking 4 or 5 years from now, if there's a big, following for one of these players who's in college or in high school right now, they could carry that into college and just really level up everything again. I do think though, Jenna, that a lot of players just think, all right, my inbox is open, DM me with all these opportunities. And it just doesn't work like that. Like, I think that a lot of players are just so naive for how somebody like me or Jen Schroeder or Morgan Stewart got to be where we are. It's not just, hey, the DMs are open, slide in and let's do some things together. It's extreme hard work and consistency to build your brand, to find yourself, to know what you're about, to make yourself marketable, to even get any attention. Nevertheless, just being like, all right, DMs, slide on in here, let's partner up. These companies have budgets. They have limited money that they can spend. They want to not just say, oh, July 1, here we go. Here's all these opportunities. That's not how it's going to be. It's going to happen more over time. And it's going to happen for those who are investing in themselves, investing in their brand, putting themselves out there and growing and having patience. Montana, whatever, July 1, if Odyssey was in college, July 1, but for most players, you got to have patience and put in the time and effort consistently to get people to notice you.
Right. Because authenticity, I think, is the key part. Like you're talking about the brands that other people in the softball community like yourself have already built on a personal side and even for any businesses that you guys have started, things like that. It's like you have to have this element of kind of knowing who you are
Yeah.
and only aligning with things that are authentic to that, and otherwise it doesn't really work. So I agree with you. It's not that simple. Like there's a little work you have to do to make it good.
Yeah, like if somebody slides in your DMs and it's like a random protein company, like I know there's some good protein drinks, whatever, but it's like you don't want to just take anything just to say that you're a part of something. Like that's not authentic either. Like what are you about? Are you about just making a quick buck to say that you're partnered with something? It's like it's not that big of a deal. Sorry. Like I mean, I know that all these players think it is in their head, but what's an even important deal is that you grow yourself, you put yourself out there, you find what you're about, you become authentic and live up to that, and then good things are going to come your way, whether it's a partnership, sponsorship, like job. And there's so many other things other than just like let me make a quick post so I can make $50 from this protein company. Like it's about more than that, and that's what I think that we need to educate these athletes on is that part of it, not just how to make a deal, how to make, that's all a big part of it, not how to make a quick deal, a quick contract to be able to get in with somebody just to say it. That's not that important.
Totally. And actually that I feel like a big attraction to our sport is the purity of it. And so it would detract from that. Right. But I do think that I'm optimistic about how this may help women's sports overall.
Yeah, me too.
Right. It's like, I mean, the social following that so many people have, you think of like the Haley Cruzes, which, right, like she's done now, but like Jazz Severs, these people, it's like, wow, this might be able to elevate women's sports across the board.
I really hope so. It's going to be a lot to deal with for these athletes, a lot to think about. It's going to have a whole other emotional aspect with your teammates when they're getting deals. That's already hard when they're getting starts on a lineup card and you're not seeing your name, nevertheless seeing their name and big lights or promoted and knowing that they're getting their name on a paycheck. I mean, all that stuff is real life that these teams are going to have to deal with, and coaches are going to have to learn how to deal with too, and talk to their players about, and how to still build a good team chemistry and culture and all the things that happen even without this whole NIL thing. So definitely a huge shift is coming. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of learning coming and a lot of failure. A lot of good things as well, but a lot of failure that we'll have to learn from and see how to bounce back from it too and make it better.
I totally agree. I mean, like anything new, that there has to be this like learning phase, right? Yeah. Like that's how it is. But I have faith in the softball community just because I do think it's such a community, so I think that we can make it work. But yeah, to your point, it's like we have to put in the work to make that happen.
And I can't help but think that Montana Fouts is the Jenny Finch of this generation. Like it just feels like it's leading to that. And even, Jenny was her role model and she really looked up to her, but just with the momentum that she's getting and just how she works hard, just doing pitching clinics and this and that. Like she's working at it. That's what it takes, right? And she has a good basis because everybody knows her name. She's one of the biggest names in the sport right now. But what do you do with it? Hey, just come on to me, slide in the DMs. I didn't like that, Jenna, at all. And I saw that so much, and it just felt really icky and not what this is supposed to be about. And I think that we just need to remember that and remind players along the way that that's not what this is about at all.
Right. I would like to think that with this change, pro athletic departments will have like educational resources around this, right? Yeah. Like on how to do it the right way, like to set the student athletes up for success. Because at the same time, it's like if they've never dealt with this before, like they don't really know what they're doing. So yeah, let's help them make the right decisions as much as you can. I mean, people make their own decisions at the end of the day. But like, let's do what we can in our power, kind of like doing the next right thing, I guess, like we talked about earlier. It's like,
yes. Well, it's hard for them too, though, because this is just going to be more education that they have to go through on top of their school and class that they're already doing. I mean, you have to dedicate yourself to want to get better at it and want to learn. And this just gives more to them, more to deal with, more to handle.
That's a great point, because I look back all the time and don't know how I did,
And I didn't have Instagram and Facebook, TikTok. I didn't have that stuff. And it still felt hard. And watching film all the time, like everything is just more. And I know that players are adjusting to it, but this is just putting one more thing on their plate to adjust to.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. I think with some of the players too, there are sort of these areas of crossover intersection. Like you mentioned, Gabby Plain, for example, who is coming back, but even some folks who now have kind of finished their college careers, like Rachel Garcia, Deja Molipola, these women who are also Olympians. And in the past, like when I was growing up and just loved softball and was developing and wanted to go to college and all that stuff, it was really watching college softball and I was watching the Olympics. Like those were two really big aspects of the sport at the time that I think brought more people into the sport. And there are so many dimensions. Like we've talked a lot about college softball for obvious reasons, but it's off season now, but I feel like there's still so much going on in the softball world. Like for the rest of this year, like what do you normally do during off season, right? Like it's still busy, and then you have the Olympics on top of it. I'm kind of going all over the place because it is all over the place, but it's like when you think about all the different parts of softball, how do you feel like they work together?
Great question. I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, I hope that with the way that you talked about the Olympics inspiring you and the sport whenever it was around several years ago, I hope that this year feels the same way to younger players, because it does bring everybody together again, of like, oh, we're all team USA or team Canada, or maybe you're a team Japan, like if you're from Japan, like, but it does bring you that sense of pride in our sport and of your country, of course. I think too, it just has this way of like making dreams feel big again. Not that dreams don't feel big. When you're a D1 softball player, if that is your dream to do that. But the Olympics just has this different allure to it that lights a different type of fire, has a different type of sparkle than the other goals. So yeah, I think it'll bring everybody together, and I hope, yeah, not that we're all separated, but like just stupid petty like travel ball stuff, or mad about the selection show, or just to bring everybody together for that common goal.
Right. And I think it's a good kind of primer for like things like Athletes Unlimited, and
Yeah.
maybe we'll be, I mean, I know you and I will be, but like just generally speaking, chomping at the bit for as much softball as possible. There's these independent pro teams that are playing. Like there's still a lot that goes on. Travel ball, you mentioned, like even people just getting instruction, like there's still a lot that goes on. And I think that is really important. Like not just college softball. It's huge. We love it, but there's a lot of aspects to softball. The Olympics being such a huge one, especially after all this time. But I don't know. I'm hoping that this attention for college softball is going to translate across those other aspects too.
Yeah, I hope that every year. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that's missing, is just that one place to go to when college is done, to keep that momentum. And for whatever the reason, nobody has figured it out. It's not saying that it can't get figured out. It just hasn't. So maybe, like we said, with this NIL stuff, maybe that will help to push forward a pro league with some more funds and sponsorships and attention. But it all comes back to money. And for some reason, there's a really big drop off after college. And we got to figure it out. And hopefully we will.
Yeah, I do. Like you said, I do hope that NIL helps with maybe translating that a little bit better. Like, oh, hey, this is just the start. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden we have pro players that kind of take those into the future. But we'll see. Like you said, going to be a huge learning curve at first.
Yeah. And I mean, AU did great. I'm not taking anything away from Athletes Unlimited, but at the end of the day, it's still like not a team playing a team for a World Series, or I mean, you're trying to do an individual championship, so it just has a different feel, and that gained a lot of traction for sure. It was very interesting and really, really unique, but we need to find a real pro league that has multiple teams and gets the attention that it deserves.
I agree with that in the sense of I've said this multiple times, listeners will remember this, but I really want that relationship between softball and the MLB, for example, that the WNBA and the NBA has really started to develop and form, and that support and that collaboration. And I think to do that, though, to do that successfully, we do need more of a centralized, like, okay, this is the main place to go after college. There can be supplementary things, that's great, but yeah.
And maybe it's coming, maybe it's coming. The whole MLB part of it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We're all just like at the edge of our seats, waiting to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah. I mean, there's opportunity there. There's low hanging fruit. So we'll see. Well, I mean, I could ask you 5 million more things, but I will respect your time instead. Maybe we can have you on another time so I can ask you the other million things I had in mind. But
Yeah.
I always wrap up with a game that's called Safer Out with every guest. It's just fun, quick thing. Basically, I'll bring up a topic, and if you like it or you agree with it, you'll call it safe. If you don't like it, you don't agree with it, you call it out.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So first one is intentional walks, safe or out.
Safe.
Okay. I was curious because sometimes pitchers, I don't know. I just didn't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking bigger for the strategy of the game and how it seemed to really work this year as a pitcher. I want to feel like I can get everybody out, but I want to think like bigger picture and not egotistically about that. So safe. Yeah.
That's a good point, egotistically, because I was thinking, well, sometimes you just want to compete, you just want to get after it, but you're right. Like it also isn't about the ego. So great point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm always curious with pitchers because sometimes, I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that was the first one. Second one, the RPI system, safe or out.
Out, but I don't know what is safe or in.
Right. Like, okay, yeah. So we know maybe this could be better, but we're not sure what the answer is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think I agree with that.
RPI, a different way to do RPI and taking away the geographical restrictions that we have that I feel like holds a lot of things back even more. So combination.
Yes, totally agree. Like there has to be some sort of system, I think, or some sort of like measurement or something.
Yeah.
We clearly need to, iterate on this.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you so far. Okay. Last one is bat flips, safe or out.
Safe. Yeah.
Most pitchers are like out immediately, but I had a feeling like from the broadcast side and everything that you might say safe.
I know. And I hit too. It's not something that I would do, but it's just something that I've learned. I just like it. I like what it brings to the game. And just being you, if that's what you feel like you want to do. Like I'm all about choice and your decision. Like if that is what represents you, then I'm all for it. And if it doesn't, like me, then nobody's saying that you have to do it. So yeah, I'd say safe. Yeah.
I think that's a totally fair answer. And also you're my favorite type of person to ask, like a pitcher who hit, a hitter who pitched, however you want to say it, because it's like, you get it from both sides. So what do you think,
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for joining again. I mean, I know we've been chatting for a while trying to get you on the show. I'm glad we finally could, but this is just great. Thank you for everything you're doing too for our sport. Like I said, I really do think you're one of the best voices of softball right now, and I appreciate all you do. So thanks for joining as well.
Thank you. And thanks for all you do too. It's a lot of fun. We'll do it again.
I would love that.
Let's do it.
I'm really pumped to be able to talk with Amanda. She has such deep knowledge on the game, just from multiple angles. And I just love being able to pick her brain and hear her perspective. And the more people that we have like her representing our sport and pushing it forward, I think the better off we're going to be. So with that, let's transition to the foul tip of the week. This week's foul tip is about making the most of a situation. And right now, in this instant, I don't necessarily mean performing in a high pressure moment on the field. I'm talking about like, let's zoom out. Let's think about the whole person, not just the softball player, and making the most out of the experience that softball gives you. So what made me think of this in the first place is that there has been sort of a debate on Twitter, like now that we're in travel ball season, about travel ball players and vacations. And the concept is basically that, summer is the height of travel softball, getting recruited, competing, nationals, all those things. And elite players prioritize it accordingly. So our last guest, Lauren Hager, she had some more hot takes. I mean, I gotta love her Twitter feed. Highly recommend it if you haven't taken a look yet. But what resonated with me with what she said was, she basically said, ask any elite player what their vacations growing up were, and they'll say softball tournaments. And this could not be more true. In terms of my experience, I mean, I went on my first quote unquote real non-softball vacation when I was 24 years old. Like, I was a fully grown adult out of college. You know, I celebrated my August birthday growing up in whatever state nationals was in that year. It's just something that it's part of it. It's part of the lifestyle. But I have to say, my mom also always planned something to get family time or to celebrate my birthday, whatever it was, that sort of piggybacked off of the tournaments. So, for example, I went horseback riding in Colorado. I went to a water park in Kentucky. Went to Toby Keith's restaurant in Oklahoma City. Like, there was always something to make the most of the experience as a person, not just a player. And I do think that vacation is what you make it. There's not one way to do vacation. But it's important to do something because we do need balance for our mental health. I mean, you can commit to softball and the tournaments and still make time for your well-being. You can do both. It just takes work to maintain that balance. And you have to be willing to do that work if you have big goals. So the concept is just to commit in a healthy way. And I've even seen the Olympic teams doing that in Japan. I mean, they are obviously laser focused on their goal and getting that medal. All the buildup and the training and preparing for the biggest opportunity there is in softball. Really. But I've seen their posts on social media stealing away some moments to enjoy the food together, do some activities together, just do little things and get some time that's a little bit different. And they're soaking up that entire experience. To be honest, that's the kind of thing that keeps you looser and probably in a better headspace to perform anyway, as long as that foundational commitment is always there. So that's it. Make the most of a situation. That's the foul tip of the week. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, presented by BetOnline. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever else you listen, including Bleav.com. And you can watch the videos on YouTube as well. So subscribe to the show, rate it, write a review for it, share it with your friends. Again, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. You can always reach out to me on Twitter at Jenna Becerra01 and Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. Thank you for tuning in. We're back, y'all, and we'll catch you soon.